Hi, hello. Yes. Uh,
That means you're going to learn everything you need to know while building beautiful real-world websites and web applications. You'll build a beautiful product website using HTML, CSS, and Bootstrap. You'll build games and musical apps like this drum kit. You'll learn about Node, React, and the MERN stack to build classic developer projects like a to-do list app and a project manager that's perfect for showing off at your next interview. If you're curious, take a look at the downloadable curriculum to learn more. Now, this course assumes absolutely no prior programming experience. So if you're a complete beginner, I'll be there every step of the way, taking you from programming fundamentals all the way through to intermediate and more advanced concepts. Now, if you're an advanced developer, then take a look at the curriculum and start at the level that suits you best. So instead of spending $12,000 on our in-person bootcamp and having to take time off work, you're going to get access to exactly the same curriculum that has years of design and testing behind it. So you won't just know what to do, but also why you're doing it. Now, don't just take my word for it. Check out what my past students had to say about the course. Your time is precious. That's why you deserve the best course money can buy. So what are you still waiting for? Join the course today and find out why over 1 million students have rated my courses 5 stars and see what you can do by mastering web development.
go to question.
Hi guys, it's Angela from the App Brew, and in this lesson we're going to deep dive into how
Oh, I see.
does the internet actually work? Because here's the thing that we use every single day, and we completely take it for granted. So before we start developing websites and web apps for people to access through the internet, it's really important that we understand. So what exactly is the internet? Well, a lot of people think of it as a cloud, something that's hanging around in the sky. It's super complex, super difficult to understand, but actually, that's not it at all. The internet is really simple. All it is just a long piece of wire we use every single day, and we completely take it for granted. So before we start developing awesome websites and web apps for people to access through the internet, it's really important that we understand the fundamentals of how the internet actually works. So what exactly is the internet? Well, a lot of people think of it as a cloud, something that's hanging around in the sky. It's super complex, super difficult to understand, but actually that's not it at all. The internet is really simple. All it is just a long piece of wire, and the wire connects different computers to each other. So you might have one computer that's in Seattle and another computer that's in London, and they can talk to each other and transfer data through this giant wire. Now, some of these computers attached to the internet have a very special job. They have to be online 24/7, ready to serve you all of the data and the files that you are requesting when you try to access websites. And the computers that are doing that job we would call a server. And the computers that any user would use to access the internet is called a client. Now you can imagine a web server as a giant library that's open 24/7, and you can go in there at any hour of the day and request, I want to see Google's homepage, or I want to see the latest post on TechCrunch, and it would be able to serve you with all of the files and data server. And the computers that any user would use to access the internet is called a client. Now you can imagine a web server as a giant library that's open 24/7, and you can go in there at any hour of the day and request, I want to see Google's homepage, or I want to see the latest post on TechCrunch, and it would be able to serve you with all of the files and data that you would need to be able to view whatever website it is that you requested. Now you can imagine if there's a library that's big enough to house all of these websites, then it's going to be pretty difficult to quickly locate the thing that you want out of this giant library, right? So how is this problem solved on the internet? Well, let's say that you're sitting at, how is this problem solved? It'll be pretty difficult to quick enough to house all of these websites. Then it's going to be pretty difficult to quickly locate the thing that you want out of this giant library, right? So how is this problem solved on the internet? Well, let's say that you're sitting at home on your computer and you type in google.com because you want to head over to the main Google homepage. What happens behind the scenes is that your browser will send a message to your internet service provider. So these are the people who you pay to be able to access the internet. And if you're in the US, that's a company like AT&T or Comcast. And if you're in the UK, then that would be something like BT or TalkTalk. Now the message that you're sending the ISP is, I want to see google.com. And the ISP will then relay that message to something called a DNS server, a domain name system server. And a DNS server is essentially just a souped up phone book. And what happens when you make that request through your browser is the DNS server will look up in its database as to what is the exact IP address of that website that you're trying to access. And every single computer that's connected to the internet has an IP address. This is like a postal address for your computer, so that when people need to send and receive files on the internet, each computer can be located by their unique IP address. And once the DNS server finds the IP address, it sends that back to your browser. So now you know the exact address where you can find the Google homepage. The next thing that happens is you will send a direct request to that address through your internet service provider. And this message will be delivered via what's called the happens is you will send a direct request to that address through your internet service provider. And this message will be delivered via what's called the internet backbone. Now, the internet backbone isn't some sort of analogy for some clever programming. It's literally the backbone of the internet. And if you head over to submarinecablemap.com, you can view all of the underwater cables that power the internet. And the internet is made up of these huge, sprawling masses of wires connecting all of the world's internet users. As you can imagine, it's a pretty complex world out there. Now, if I'm sitting in London and I want to see a website that's hosted in the United States, then my browser would have to make a request that goes through one of these cables under the Atlantic Ocean in order to reach the United States. And once that computer has received my request, that goes through one of these cables under the Atlantic Ocean in order to reach the United States. And once that computer has received my request, they'll send back all of the relevant data again through these giant cables. And to navigate all of this crazy underwater and above water wires, all I have is an IP address. It's like as if I'm sending a letter halfway across the world, and my only hope for my letter to reach my friend is that postal address on the front of the envelope. So once I've gotten the IP address of the website that I want to access, then my browser sends another message through the internet service provider via the internet backbone to the server that is located at that address, 216.582.10.46. And the computer that's located at that address is, of course, the Google server. And on this server, there's all of the files that I would need in order to be able to view the Google homepage. The server then sends all of those files back to me through the internet backbone, and I get to see the Google homepage in my browser. And all of that happens in a matter of milliseconds. And just to imagine the journey that my data has gone on, traveling through the world thousands of times per day. So why don't you give it a go? Open up your browser and type in 216.58.210.46 and hit enter to see the Google homepage being served up to you through the internet. Now that we've spoken about how the internet works,
Come on. Thank you. Penting. B.
In this episode, I want to talk about how exactly do websites work? What exactly does HTML, CSS, and JavaScript do exactly? Now, in order to access a web page, we all know that you need a browser, right? And that can be Chrome, Safari, Firefox, whatever is your favorite one. These are all pieces of software that allow you to look up the IP address of your website and be able to receive data that it can render into these beautiful websites that we see. Now, the data that you receive from the server usually consists of 3 types of files: HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. And it's very likely that you would have come across these types of files or these words before, because they're so common and they're so integral to how websites work. But what exactly do they do, and why are there so many different types of files? Why can't we just have one file that's, a website? Well, they actually have very different jobs. The HTML code file is responsible for the structure of your website. So if a website was a house, then the HTML would be the builder who would come in to build the walls or put in a toilet. Basically, they establish the structure of your house. And when you write HTML code, you also build up the structure of your website. So you could use HTML to add an image